actually, you know what, let's do introductions. Oh, let's do introductions first, and then we'll get to the meat of the meeting, and we see each other on screen, but we all look different in 3D. So Kate Conlon, honored to be the mayor of San Rafael.
Joanne Webster, honored to be the CEO of the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce.
Terrence Thornton, the owner of San Rafael Martial Arts.
Eli Hill, I represent District 2 on the city council.
Lydia Kay, as administrative assistant to the city manager's office.
Carol Parks, and I'm honored to be the chair of the San Rafael board this year, and I'm with Allegra Home Care.
I'm Roger Smith. I am a member of the public and am on the board of the Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning. My name is Micah Hinkle. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of San Rafael.
Lydia, maybe you can help. It's taxing my eyes a little bit. You could just call on people to introduce themselves and maybe put them in, what's that called? Gallery. Thank you. I think I go. There we go.
There we go. Okay, we could start with Bob. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bob Valenti. I'm a vice president with Cosmon Companies.
Helena.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kalina Cloud. I'm project manager for CPI developers in East San Rafael.
Karen.
I'm Karen Cunyo. I am a San Rafael resident, a consultant with Workforce with Marin Builders and also with San Rafael's Age Friendly Partnership.
Thomas.
Good morning, Thomas Jarofsky, Senior Advisor with Cosmon Companies.
And Ken.
Yeah, good morning, Ken Hira, President of Cosmont Companies. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think it's always nice to know who's in the room, the real room and the virtual room, and we're all together in the same place. So it's fantastic. The first item on the agenda is public comment, and this is anyone who'd like to speak on something not on today's agenda. And for folks on the screen, raise your hand or unmute or yell out.
Actually, maybe, I guess this might be
Of course.
a good time. Well,
Yes.
I would just
Go ahead,
want to,
Roger.
in the news lately, especially in Fairfax, has been, they've had some little battles with rent control and that sort of thing. And I know there's,
Sorry.
and that issue has come up in San Rafael a number of times. And I'd hate to see San Rafael repeat Fairfax's.
Masks.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
And San Rafael also has a long history of doing things with gathering together multiple stakeholders with multiple points of view and working on those problems kind of ahead of time. And I want to suggest that, and I thought since this is economic development and it is an economic issue for landlords especially, and I am, by the way, I'm not a residential landlord. I don't own a stick of residential property in San Rafael. But I just think it'd be a good way to avoid dissension, and it might be a way to do something intelligently as opposed to doing something in a reactive way that is counterproductive and just pisses everybody off.
Thank you. So we do have the housing, it's not on the agenda, so we can't get deep into it, but the housing element is coming to the Planning Commission on April 26th. And that's pretty much the starting point of any discussion, and totally agree that we are very good at having the community engage on tough issues. So great. So hopefully April 26th, Planning Commission, and then the council, I think might be 2 weeks after that. Okay. I don't know. Right.
Yeah, can I add what is fact-based, not getting into it?
Very short because it's not.
Very
on the
one
agenda.
sentence.
Yes.
One sentence, just to add to what is in the draft housing
Oh,
element.
yes.
It does provide a clause that says that the city will analyze and examine policies that will make sense for everyone. I think that what you're referring to is the city just going to jump in and do something without thoughtfulness? And I think that we would follow the pattern of what we've always done, which is deep engagement, nothing herky-jerky.
Yeah, I'm allowed to say things.
Thank you.
I mean, the city does have a long record of doing that, and I just wanted to, it's a nice process, frankly. It works well when it's done in calm.
Any other public comment? Like that we're not doing things herky jerky. I'm gonna quote that.
I'm not even quite sure what it means.
I know.
Maybe we can put it over the door.
Okay. I'm excited today that Cosmont is here, and again, the beauties of hybrid, they actually are here. And I'm gonna turn it over to Director Hinkle to set this up. Director Hinkle.
Great, thank you so much. This is a process that we've been undertaking for some time. A lot of the people on the call and in this room have actually participated in this for outreach, feedback, thoughts. And it really does set the stage for San Rafael in terms of what I kind of consider a recast of the economic development program as a whole. With support of Cosmont, Ken Hira, Bobby, and Thomas, they've really kind of take a snapshot of where we're at and give us some pathways on where we can go and how best to approach this. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Ken and his team for kind of overview and kind of where we're at this point.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Thank you so much. And Mayor and council members and leaders in the room, really appreciate this opportunity to share an update of the Economic Development Strategic Plan that, as Micah mentioned, we've been working on. We're going to pull it up on our screen and share sort of a presentation with you in context. A month or two ago, we gave sort of the Economic Development Strategic Plan, which was pretty data-driven and market analytical, if you will, to provide some market intelligence. This is sort of the second half of the EDSP, which is focused a little bit more on strategies and trends, and we have some case studies. So we'll probably spend the most time on the strategies per se this morning, and then we're certainly here, Tom and Bobby and myself, to answer questions. I think the goal is to ultimately present a full presentation of the EDSP, ideally sometime in May. So we would bring that to the full council in a public hearing. That's sort of the schedule that we're on. So without any further ado, let's pull up the presentation.
And Ken, as you're speaking, because we are in a big room, if you can maybe use a little bit more of your outdoor voice, even though you're sitting inside, because we
Sure,
have
no problem.
our
No problem. Yeah, I'm just so you know, I'm in a hotel room at a conference. So whatever neighbors are sleeping in, they'll get the benefit of the EDSP for the city of San Rafael. I'm just kidding.
Can you allow sharing? If I could share my screen.
Hold on, say we're playing with the speakers and we will get to that.
Try again, Ken.
Okay, go ahead.
We did this the other day where
I
we
know.
selected the screen that worked.
Oh, you did?
There it is.
Oh, that's.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh, my gosh, Lydia, thank you.
And Linda, can we have speaker view? Is that okay, Mary Kate?
See the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah. So like having 8 people help you zoom. Yeah.
It's all about the software.
So this is what they call hybrid, right?
Yeah, no, we can hear you perfectly. We fixed the speakers. Yeah.
Okay, good, excellent. Well, let's thank you. And Bobby, let's go to again, this is an update for the subcommittee and obviously the public that's in the room and our strategic partners, if you will. So Bobby, let's go to so just as a high level, the outline here is, as I said, we've identified strategies. There's about 7 categories of those. We also have an economic development toolkit that is a part of this presentation. And then we have some land use trends that are very important that sort of inform everything that everybody's doing, if you will, these days in the public sector for that matter, and private sector, and some case studies. I may not go through all the details of each and every one of these sections, but I think it's going to be there for you to absorb and review. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this information wants to ultimately be posted on your website for it to be consumed by really the community as well. So next slide. Just real quick, high level, the vision. So the EDSP is designed to really help strengthen the local base and the fiscal health of the city. The city of San Rafael has not done a strategic plan before, so this is a very important sort of inaugural roadmap, if you will, or playbook. I was talking to Micah through this process, and we really see this as an opportunity or a menu of opportunities and really sort of a playbook, to help really the residents in the community and able to leverage some access to funding, if you will, and then create some resiliency in a post-pandemic era. Core objectives: increase fiscal revenue, enhance the commercial and residential market, also with housing options and commercial, of course, options, enhance employment and business opportunities, job opportunities for the community, and then infrastructure and improvements to infrastructure, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Next slide. So how we've outlined the section for economic development strategies is we've assigned some dollar amounts because there's a cost to economic development. Assuming that that's an important priority like it is for many cities, there's a cost. There's a cost of doing business, if you will. And so what we tried to do is create a high-level assumption within the 7 categories of costs. We also tried to identify workload and timeframes. So that's the structure of this section. But the 7 categories are as follows: supporting business development, downtown reimagination, potential for an enhanced infrastructure financing district, which leverages tax increment financing, strengthen local partnerships, attract high-tech uses, outreach for private and business development opportunities, and then workforce development. And as you can tell, the range in costs over a 3 to 5 year period, for each of these categories with the $1, $2, or $3 sign, range from 50 to 200 grand, 200 to 500, 500, 750. It's about $500,000 that you could invest if you choose to over the next 3 to 5 years to help with economic development and all the priorities and objectives that we just shared. So next slide, as we get into each of these, support business development.
And just as a quick math question,
Yes.
does it suggest that if the current spend level is 300,000 and 500 is what we could spend, or are we just saying that we're looking at a delta of 200,000 per year additional?
Yes, that's one way of looking at it. You could either look at it that way, or you could say, let's prioritize our 300 grand and not spend the 500, but we got to pick the areas that are important to us with the 300 that we have. It's not an obligation to spend the 500. We're just providing for an estimate for all of these categories and ranges of categories.
And I apologize, but that's not quite accurate. The 500 is meant to be incremental to the existing budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So, and again, there's action items that we were very specific on for this first strategy and for each of the strategies. I don't want to read through every single one of these, but here's the high level notion of business friendliness. And I know we've all heard that before. What does it mean? I was just having some discussions with council members here at this League of California Cities conference, the leadership summit in Sacramento. And what is branding? What is business friendliness? It feels like a qualitative skill set, if that makes sense, or a qualitative trait, but it really can be borne out in true policy, in true action, and true effort, if you will. So it's a vital component to support the needs of businesses and developers, and it really fosters entrepreneurship, if you will. And that's what helps a local economy. We identify some of the action items to include business expansion, attraction, and retention. And I know that a lot of folks get focused on business attraction, and we help a lot of cities with business attraction. But we also have a community we're doing a study for in Southern California. One of our conclusions is they have a lot of retail. It's pretty strong. It's not about business attraction in their case, it's about business retention. So, each of these have a meaning relative to the existing conditions within a community. So it's modifying existing economic development programs to enhance that, to support business development. There's an opportunity zone in the city. We could try to leverage that area, maintaining data analytics and economic trends. The fact that you're doing a study today should hopefully mean that as you move along in that 3 to 5 year period, if you will, you're continuing to keep an eye on the economics and the trends, because as we know, things change. They're changing as we speak. Increasing a bilingual staff, and that's an expensive proposition because staffing is an expensive proposition, but we think it's, you know, an important action item. And then one other item is this Shark Tank notion where you can get innovation, you know, in your at City Hall before your very eyes by creating some events where there's new entrepreneurial ideas and local business input and local entrepreneurial networking that can take place. And we have an example of that in our case study. So each of these strategies, by the way, as you'll see on the bottom, speak to the idea that we have in our economic tool section of this strategic plan, and in the case study section of the strategic plan, examples where they lend themselves to each of the strategies. So we identify here the city of Thousand Oaks and city of Corona are two areas where we did work, and they can hopefully help enlighten, if you will, examples of real implementation of certain strategies, of these strategies. Next slide. So we're continuing on with economic development, and the second area within this category is activating 4th Street. So how do we create a successful downtown? And it's a very important priority in our minds, but considering programs, you know, certainly collaborating, which we talk throughout in this case with the chamber and other, liaise with other groups, but consider programs that help the existing businesses thrive. It can be street enhancement or outdoor retail or the permitting process for outdoor retail or uses within those spaces to help businesses thrive. Expanding allowable uses. There can be a sales tax in lieu concept that can make sense from a financial perspective for non-retail uses. And then, continuing on is consider the expansion of the business-based improvement district, sort of a B bid to a P bid, which is a property-based business improvement district or a property improvement district to support, you know, cleanliness and security and the marketing of downtown. Evaluating publicly owned properties, because what you control, and that's an important asset strategy, if you will. Surface parking lots, your parking garages. And then again, we have trends and case studies that try to help support these notions and ideas of downtown reimagination. Next slide. So continuing on, invest in physical improvements, invest in other enhancements like signage and wayfinding and public art, theming of the streets and sidewalk enhancements. And again, trying to invest in safety, public safety, whether it's perceived or real, safety is a very, very important component of a downtown. It is for every downtown. Growing social media engagement, which is another area that's important given today's digital natives that we all we're all part of. But the social media influence is so critical in marketing of a downtown. And then again, pedestrian mall case studies we have in our report as well. Next slide, please. And analyzing implementation of EIFD. So what's interesting about our work in San Rafael is we pretty quickly identified the fact that your Northgate Mall was going to generate a tremendous amount of new assessed value. And we're in these discussions with so many communities, but if you have $500 million of new assessed value that's going to be created by the private sector, but it's new tax increment to your general fund, there's an opportunity by creating a TIF district, a tax increment financing district, to really capture that value, to take advantage of it. So we're actually conducting, or ideally going to start conducting, a feasibility analysis for you for an EIFD, an enhanced infrastructure financing district. And the other part of that is your tax share, the city's tax share, which is about 16 cents, can be coupled potentially with the county. So we want to make sure that we're liaising with the county about the opportunity to capture value and to show them that there's a return on investment or taking tax increment and putting it into infrastructure and affordable housing. So EIFDs are a key tool, and we're not exaggerating, the leader in that industry, if you will, or sub-industry within the state, because investing in infrastructure is critical, and there's not a lot of sources to do that. So working with the county would be another way to help you potentially form an EIFD, pursue grants. The formation of an EIFD in the minds of the eyes of the state allows you, frankly, to get access to better scoring, if you will, to certain grants, info infrastructure grants, the ASIC grants, the TCC grants, et cetera. So we have, again, an explanation within our economic toolkit section that shares with you an example, examples of EIFDs, and frankly, an example of how the mall reinvestment or value creation can be captured. Next slide. Strengthening local partnerships. Exploring the formation of a countywide tourism district is one idea. Your transient occupancy tax rate is 12%. So can we consider increasing that? Evaluate a list of community events, dining under the lights, block parties, et cetera, for your downtown environments. Expand special events in the Canal District or Terra Linda. Establishing partnerships and leveraging cross-promotional materials with the county. You know, the county is a big attractor for a variety of things, obviously, in this part of California, this part of the state. But I think we've talked to you all before. You are a critical component to the county's economic engine. And so there can be a partnership there that you could consider, and it can help industry and visitors. Where the tide rises, all boats rise, if you will. Pursuing tourism marketing, and again, the city is a gateway to the wine country or to the Mendocino coast, for that matter, and so that's a pretty incredible opportunity for you all and a strength for you all to leverage. Cultural arts district designation, levering that, which is an important designation, and then collaborating with organizations like the Canal Alliance for workforce development, entrepreneurship, and economic resiliency. Next slide. Attracting high-tech industrial uses. Your industrial component within your city is got a super high occupancy and actually makes a large contribution to the economics of your community. And examples of, like, BioMarin for that matter, as a high-tech firm, and in other parts of the industrial parts of your city are very important. Again, sort of business attraction, but revising zoning restrictions to actually help entitlement processing or permitting processing is an important potential action item. Pursuing new sectors, potential growth opportunities in biotech. It's been our experience that in the office market, which is being very challenged these days because of teleworking, that one sub area that's growing within the office market is life science. And so that's an area that can continue to be a growth opportunity and levered within the city. So identify target areas for industrial development like Smith Ranch or the Canal District, potentially with an overlay zone, conducting outreach to businesses and making sure that the city is in a good stead when it comes to public-private partnerships. Understanding what's happening in the private sector and having those relationships is important. Again, the strategic land use policies toolkit section identifies some zoning and entitlement opportunities, and there's a pretty cool case study in there that highlights the city of San Diego and the biotech sector in the La Jolla area of the city and what they did. Next slide, please. Outreach for private and business development opportunities. Again, analyze key privately owned sites, conducting outreach and collaborate, pursue businesses and developers, increase potentially the cannabis business opportunities through new licensing, which can be a revenue generator. The other thing we did in our playbook or our menu with those dollar signs is we tried to identify, the revenue generation. There's the cost to economic economic development, but there's also a return. Where can you achieve those returns? And so we've highlighted in certain portions here, revenue generating or funding capacity. EIFDEs are funding capacities. Increasing cannabis licensing can be a revenue generator, et cetera. Updating your mobile vendor ordinance. And again, there's some examples of within the case study section in the toolkit. The Smith Ranch movie theater, in our estimation, is an opportunity site. Potentially Marin Square Shopping Center is an opportunity site. Next slide.
Ken, can you give an example of the mobile use case at the very end?
I'm sorry, you broke up for 1 second. Could you repeat?
Mobile vendor, can you describe that a little bit more?
Do you mind repeating? You broke up.
Ken,
Action 6.5.
yeah, 6.5, what is mobile vendor? Can you describe that?
I think Micah needs to describe that.
Yeah.
So in 6.5 is really looking at some of our equity opportunities for some of our business community. When we look at mobile vendor, so basically mobile food carts or street vendors, this is an area that actually has had issues throughout, at least the 20 years I've been on for San Rafael. But really an opportunity to reevaluate this and really look at pathways for legalization, permitting, and enforcement over time. We have a couple of conditions where permits aren't being achieved out there. They're, a brick and mortar store with, selling a product where there's on the street, they're selling the same product. So really trying to find ways to provide a pathway for enforcement, but then also legalization, and trying to support basically where the best place to do that is and establish kind of that legalization pathway. But it's something that really is a crossover because in our ordinance, it's very broad. And then how it's enforced and regulated from the county to the city to our public works department to our police department. There just kind of needs to be a recast of this and really trying to find ways for pathways for economic success through that. So this is a little smaller program. It really is specific. I can't say it's a revenue generator, but it is, for me, is that entrepreneurship approach, how to best actually support that for some of the cultural standpoints for how they touch acquire products and food.
Thanks.
And Micah, inclusive of food trucks, if I'm not mistaken, is that right?
Yeah, 'cause I was imagining there's folks that are pushing around carts that are selling, say, frozen goods, and then I'm imagining food trucks, so it encompasses all those.
That's correct. Anything on a mobile and basically wheels or it doesn't have a fixed asset.
So it's to help them transition from mobile to fixed, is that, I'm not sure I understand.
It's a combination, really. It's really for the ones who actually are doing it without permitting, they just basically set up a shop on the sidewalk. Establishing potential opportunity or zones for them to actually do that with the permit. Right now we're pretty carte blanche on this is not permitted, but the enforcement mechanisms, that's the challenge. So really evaluating that issue a little bit deeper because it is impacting a specific area in our community.
Okay, the seventh strategy is workforce development programs, and expanding those programs can help local residents gain better, higher paying jobs, if you will, improve their economic circumstances, get access to a higher quality pipeline of talent. So coordinating with Workforce Alliance, the university, colleges, Chamber of Commerce, Canal Alliance can really encourage collaboration for local and regional educational and workforce development organizations and programs. Conducting outreach to local businesses to access skills, understand existing conditions of what the skill gaps are for that matter, and then finding the workers or helping find the workers and conduct some of that liaising with local aid organizations that can impact the workforce environment. So next slide. Performance metrics. So if you have strategies, of course, what's important is to understand how you can measure those. And so we've identified almost a dozen areas that can sort of be that are sort of quantifiable, if you will, tracking the number of business expansion or attraction or retention participants. On the EIFD funding, if you were to form a district, it's certainly identifying the revenues that are being received from that, which takes time. EIFDs are 45-year districts, so they take time to realize benefit from. And then commercial building permits, measuring that developer interest, assessing value creation, showing the increase by the private sector, a number of business licenses that are issued, employment by industry by showing the success within the commercial areas, sales tax revenue by geographic district. We can certainly look at sales tax, which we do often, and we've seen a general decline in sales tax from a brick and mortar perspective because of the online shopping that's taken place. But what's also very interesting is sales tax is coming into the city's general fund, all cities' general fund for that matter, through a county pool. So the online shopping where sales tax is being distributed or withheld and distributed does inure to the benefit of cities through a county pool. So understanding the sales tax revenue growth is important. Hotel tax revenue growth is important. I know the new hotels being built in downtown. Hotel visitor surveys, annual surveys of business owners, again, creating that partnership, the public-private partnerships, if you will, to hear from business owners what their opportunities and constraints are, if you will, and then special events information, number of events, attendees, and tracking that as a performance metric. Next slide.
Frozen.
Thank you. I don't know if there's a delay, but sorry about that. San Rafael strengths. So we've got the next few and the last few slides here of this chapter are strengths, opportunity or challenges, and some opportunities. So I'll try to go through these relatively quickly, but they're important. You are the economic engine for Marin County. You contribute more as a city to Marin County than the other cities do. So that's an important fact. You have a very unique character. Again, we've talked about some of these things, but a gateway between the Bay Area and wine country, the downtown cultural arts district designation, the green space that's important and identified within your community. There are unique characteristics. You have key commercial sites for development. You have a diverse workforce. You have anchor institutions, Dominican University, BioMarin, and others. You have transportation access. Obviously, you've got a transit component, as well as obviously the Highway 101 that runs right through your city, and then 580 as a different connector that can enhance transit-oriented development and connectivity. You have a very strong Chamber of Commerce and a very good relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, and they're very important to the city to activating the opportunities for commerce, if you will. And then what's also interesting when we say relative affordability, it's not inexpensive to live in San Rafael. It's not inexpensive to live in Marin County, but on a relative scale, you have a lower cost of single-family housing compared to other communities within the county and the San Francisco Peninsula. Next slide. But what comes with strengths are challenges as well. So there are vacancies and some blight circumstances. There's a market trend today, as I alluded to before, that has created, I think, a challenge for downtown because the business of storefronts has changed dramatically. Office parks don't really work the way they used to because of teleworking. The required CUPs for the industrial zone can be seen as an obstacle. Shortage of workforce. The general notion of not in my backyard development, although I think that the progress that has been made, if you will, with the reimagination of Northgate Mall with the residential units that are coming there are going to tremendously help not just the RENA requirements for your city, but they're going to help create some level of affordability And I just mean by adding supply. So that's very important, but a resistance to change can be a challenge, including the permitting process for the private entitlement and permitting process for the private sector. Homelessness and crime, there's a perceived notion of not the highest safety levels, say in downtown. Environmental risk, I think other communities are facing this as well, flood risks. And there are some tools there as well that's akin to a tax increment financing district that can help dispel that. High development costs, and that's not just a function of San Rafael, that's everywhere. That's facing high construction costs, material and labor costs, partly as a function of the pandemic, and certainly partly of the function of the circumstance we are in our economy, which is the last point here, and that's just economic uncertainty as interest rates and inflation are basically through the roof, that are not helping any community with new development and vitalization. What are the opportunities? A precise plan for downtown development, city-county partnerships, which we just talked about, EIFDs, or even the climate resilient district, which we haven't talked too much about. But like I say, it leverages tax increment financing to pay for things like flooding. Tourism is a gateway to the areas that we discussed earlier to capture a significant portion of that tourism base. Certainly negotiating, if you will, an appropriate agreement with the Northgate Mall developer as they build this blended use town center and add 1,000 units. That's pretty catalytic to the city, to certainly the area of North San Rafael. Parking structures and parking lots, those are opportunities that can be leveraged. And then you have an opportunity zone in the canal area, as I mentioned earlier. And then you've got strong regional rail service, if you will, that connects to the peninsula. That really is an opportunity for transit-oriented development. Next slide. So that takes us through sort of the first chapter. I don't think I want to spend as much time on the next two chapters, but I can go through them quicker. At this point, I wouldn't mind pausing just to see if there's any thoughts or questions or feedback, or if you'd like me to continue, I can continue.
We'll take a few questions. Your question,
I had 3 questions. Can you hear me okay, Ken?
Yes.
So you talked about differentiating between what we are currently doing around business-based BID versus property-based BID. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what are the potential benefits or drawbacks? It just said to examine it, but what are reasons why we might proceed with one versus another?
Yeah, appreciate that. I'll let Tom address that. Tom, if you don't mind.
Sure. The business-based improvement district basically collects revenue based on the revenue that the actual tenants within the centers generate. And as a result of the pandemic, the economic activity had been severely restricted, and there's just very little in terms of taxes that the businesses can pay. A property-based district basically charges taxes to the landowner and the building owner on a square foot basis of land area or building area. It's a much larger base to have a low tax rate that will generate substantially increase in revenues to help fund the various activities, because the business improvement district operates on a bare bones budget that really has no money for any special activities. It's just pretty much covers the basic management of the organization.
Is there anything anecdotal to what in the interviews that you conducted that makes it seem like San Rafael would benefit from moving more towards a property-based BID?
I don't think it's an issue of it's really a strategy that we recommend as a way of helping to benefit the downtown. We did not survey the property owners to know whether they were in favor of that or not. So it's really a funding strategy is the basic premise of it.
Yeah, and I think that is the notion. It's a suggestion to examine it, and that is to have further conversations with property owners to see if it makes sense. What you need, certainly with a bid or a P bid, as we call it, or a B bid or a P bid. What you need with either of those is the buy-in of the pool, those folks who would be in the district, because they have to agree that making an investment on their part, again, an additional tax or additional cost to them, is worth it. And so I think it's a suggestion to explore it, because as Tom said, it could create potentially a higher revenue source for your downtown and reinvestment dollars for your downtown, and property owners will, in theory, get a return on that investment.
Yeah, we've represented a group in Los Angeles, it's in the area of outside of LAX. And if you know the area, Century Boulevard, they've had a P bid for 20 years that collects, probably $1 million a year to fund all kinds of street improvements and other activities. It's been a very big success for that area. So there are clearly benefits from it if the money is invested, wisely.
Councilmember Hill,
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah, go ahead,
that's
go ahead,
okay.
Ray.
So, we'd have to determine what the baseline services currently are for a property owner. And then what you do is you present, this is what you could get above and beyond that baseline services, and is that of value to you? And a number of years ago, the current BID did explore that. And at that time, it was not something that was feasible. You have to have 50+1% of the owners opt in. And we have now many different owners. The buildings have been sold and resold. So I do think, from a chamber standpoint, that it is definitely something that we should explore.
Thank you.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, two more questions.
Go ahead.
Try to keep them as succinct as possible. I was trying to connect dots around how we get grant funding to examine for an EIFD, especially around Northgate. Is the PDA that we are funded for, is that potentially usable to examine the EIFD, or if you start from scratch on grant funding?
I'll jump in. I actually think those PDA is really more, my sense is probably not, but we could maybe look at that because it tends to be more of a community planning tool versus an economic infrastructure, which sounds weird when I say it out loud because I would say that they were linked. But I really do think historically the PDA has been really around the land use specific versus, because if this EI, whatever that is, that's a tool versus, so.
I know, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no,
connect
I
dots
think
to
it's
see how
it's
quickly
a
we
question
can
we
go.
should ask, but
Sure.
I think the grants will, I think by having this, we'd be able to attract other dollars is more what we were thinking.
And then I think it's worth, because the word opportunity zone is so colored. I think especially in this community, it's often used as synonymous with extractive practices. I just wanted to say that, when we look back at what the opportunity zone was intended to do, it was intended to revitalize and job creation for certain parts of our community. So obviously, I want to really lean in towards what the opportunity zone could be. And I appreciate you calling it out, because I think it has an association with this extractiveness.
Actually, I have a question on the opportunity zone because it's a 10-year life cycle tax deferment tool, really, and we're actually at year 7. So I was a little surprised you have that there, because if I'm an investor, that benefit of investing in that area is way diminished because I can't capture the previous 7 or 8 years. So I was just curious why you had that in there.
Well, I think it was just to identify the fact that you do have a federally identified opportunity zone. You're correct in that the 10 years where you get the greatest benefit. In the first several years, there was other benefit, like a step up in basis up to 15%. And the real tax deferment comes on a hold of 10% of 10 years, sorry. And I think that still expires in 2026, where payments would have to start to be made. But we just wanted to identify that you have an ozone, in your city.
That's fair. I just think there's always like little asterisks. It hasn't to date affected anything, but okay. Other questions or comments?
Zones have been really across the country a little bit hit and miss, but go ahead.
Okay. Can you unmute her? Or can she unmute her? Lena, go ahead.
Oh, hi, everyone. Thanks for that presentation. I just was curious. I mean, I heard economic engine a lot in reference to city of San Rafael as it relates to the rest of the county. And I think on a smaller scale, I also hear the same phrase used for East San Rafael when we're talking about just the city. I think something like 60% of the tax generated dollars come from East San Rafael. And I just was curious, I didn't hear very much about East San Rafael included in this plan. And where are the opportunities to apply this in the East San Rafael region?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Go
And
ahead.
maybe I'll expand on that question, because to me, it's East San Rafael, but it's really, what is your sense around the districts or around the different economic zones? If you could answer it kind of from a broader perspective, that would be most helpful.
Yeah, and Colleen, appreciate the question. Actually, in our first half presentation of the EDSP, which we did a month or two ago, as I mentioned, we actually spent time with the sort of data collection of different business districts. And I think we identified 4, correct me if I'm wrong. And East San Rafael clearly is one of those. Obviously, the auto industry is generating a tremendous amount of tax revenue. Again, back to business retention as a concept, very important for, I think, the city to understand where those revenues come from a geo-district basis, which we made a reference to here. But we have that data and information that will be part of the overall plan.
Doug's keynote present.
A little bit of both.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Wait, you have one more
I
comment?
have one more.
Well, and I have a comment, and then we'll move on. Yeah, go ahead.
Please, no, go ahead. So I think, I'm just, maybe I'm ahead of myself. I'm looking at next steps because this is a lot to digest. And what I'm looking at is how do we prioritize? They put dollar, values and that's also people. And so I'm looking for the biggest bang for our buck, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of this is low hanging fruit. Some of this is bigger. I mean, workforce development, and it's not just a San Rafael
Yes.
city issue. So I'm looking at what is the next steps? How do we take a deeper dive into prioritizing that?
No, fantastic question. So the question is around prioritization. I think we'll let you finish your presentation. It might get at that, because I think that's what we all figure out as we go forward. I do have one comment. Can I just have one comment on, and it's not a question, under the challenges, you had the resistance to change and the not my backyard, and that always gets my attention, because San Rafael's actually been incredibly pro-housing. We're actually not like the other 10 jurisdictions in Marin County. We're really proud of that. I do think resistance to change is a real thing, but I really am, just so you know, that the word NIMBY, I actually have not seen it applied to San Rafael. We've been able to have all our housing projects go through. And of course, you get some pushback with the people right around, but it's not to the levels. And I know you see it throughout all the other cities in California, but we're not one of those cities. So I just wanted to.
I think that's an excellent comment, because as I was reading it, if you heard where I was going with it, the fact that your mall is bringing such an incredible amount of residential, it will ideally to fruition, speaks to exactly what you said. And, not to get into the controversy of what the developer was trying to do previous to the mass amount of residential that's on the table today, what you said makes a lot of sense, Mayor, that the NIMBYism is a general theme that we find, and on a relative scale, kind of like your relative affordability, you're relatively less of a NIMBY community, certainly. And I don't know if I like the phrase either, for that matter. It's just so we can address that.
Thank you.
Okay, let me I think just one quick comment about that. I want to clarify that, in that challenges bullet point, what we were trying to refer to was that the NIMBY has historically affected the city, because over the last 10, 20 years, the data that we showed in our last presentation, there's been, almost minimal growth in, residential commercial development in the last 15 years. And that was the context of that statement. I agree with Mayor that, the city is definitely pro housing. You see a lot of tremendous developments going on in downtown, as well as the Northgate planning area. So,
yeah, and we think those developments in the downtown of course, as well as the mall. The mall is going to bring a mass amount of housing, which is important for a lot of reasons. The development in downtown, the residential, we think is very important to the creation of what we call the blending of uses and the integrating of uses where residential is allowed. We've been in many communities, Santa Monica, Santa Barbara, we've used those examples, and there's no residential in those downtowns, and those downtowns are really struggling. So no, actually commendable that there's residential coming, because that's going to bring bodies to the downtown that can actually help improve the downtown. So maybe, as Tom mentioned, you know, that comment that we made in that challenge is maybe more of a historic context. So,
Right.
but like I say, we can address that.
Thank you. So why don't you keep going? We have probably about 15 minutes. Is that right, Director Hinkle? We want to make sure we still have update time. So
Yes.
we,
Yes. And
you know what, Joanne said she can yield her time. So
yeah.
have that.
But to Joanne's point, Joanne, again, I want to address that. I appreciate that comment. We also identified, and it may not have been obvious there, but we've got another sort of one pager on the dollar amounts for the different strategies. We do identify, and they were generally in the order of time frame. So in other words, what can be done quickly or sooner? I think generally were the earlier strategies that we talked about. What will take a little bit longer period of time, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, are the latter strategies. So it is important to prioritize those because there's a lot on the list. We oftentimes have to help cities say, hey, you got 100 things on your list. Let's try to get those things on one page so we can actually get something done. So it's a very fair comment, and the prioritization of those strategies is going to be a key task ahead of us. So if we can come back to the presentation and go through, and I will go through, as I said, a little higher fashion. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's a toolkit overview that has, you know, again, what we talked about there, and strategies and districts and zoning strategies, which I can talk a little bit about, revenue replacement, government funding, again, OPM, other public money, if you will. We talk about that. Next slide. And then so there's more detail in here. I'm not going to go through all of this, but there's information, real estate strategies, there's publicly owned properties, which certainly we've identified those here, how the city can sort of utilize and leverage those city-owned parcels. There certainly is the Surplus Land Act that has to be addressed. And I can spend a little bit of time on it if you want me to, but it basically says that you have to offer your publicly owned properties to affordable housing developers before you can do anything with them, assuming you want something other than affordable housing. Next slide. The city gets 16 cents of its $1 for every $1 of its property tax increment, if you will. So you get 16 cents, which is a pretty decent share of it. You can use that 16 cents in an EIFD if you choose to, as we analyze that for you. The county gets 30 cents for every dollar. So we see that as, you know, an opportunity to really scale up the tax increment amount if there can be a partnership there. And generally the EIFDs have worked. They can work singularly with cities, but they've worked very well when the county is on board. Next slide. There's an example here. We have several examples. We have a list. We probably worked on or are working on 50 EIFDs across the state. We have a list and a map of all of those. This is one example within Orange County. And then we have district infrastructure financing tools, as we said, PBIDs, CFDs, which is community facility districts, which is also a tax on property owners, if you will. So CFDs and EIFDs can actually work together, parking districts, and then the CRDs, which I talked about briefly before. Next slide. Zoning and entitlement strategies. If we go to the next slide, we can talk about development opportunity reserve. And that's a notion of cities actually hanging on to zoning and density, if you will, so that you can use that as a trade-off. And using that as a trade-off comes with community benefits from the private sector. Next slide. So here's the process for DOR. And again, this is your document, your information to study further, and we can talk more about it. We've got examples of where we've used DOR. Next slide. Privately owned properties. So again, property owner outreach, marketing of some of those properties, entering into different versions of public-private partnerships with private owners to unlock some economic opportunities. Next slide. And so you heard me mention it before. There's the theater property, which is owned by Nationwide Theaters Corporation, and it's a Century Regency movie theater building. Next slide. This is the shopping center I made mention before, which is Marin Square. Next slide. And then different government funding and financing strategies. And so our company, Cosmont Companies, just so you know, has got two other sister companies. One's a brokerage, licensed brokerage firm, and the third is a licensed public finance company, which is called Cosmont Financial Services. We work in the areas of bond issuances and structuring, funding and financing and cash flow management programs. So that's why we identify some of those things which are important for cities to evaluate. Next slide. Grants, and we've talked a little bit about those. Again, you don't have to form an EIFD to get a grant, but you do get better scoring. But there's a whole list of grant dollars, and we're pursuing some of these, or helping cities with the strategies to pursue some of these, which can be quite lucrative when it comes to grant funding. So what we find is grants, CFDs, and EIFDs can really work together in a layering effect to help funding strategies. Next slide. And this is a seeing eye test. I can't even read it because the font's really, really small, but again, it makes references to some of the other public funding sources. Next slide. And then the last section is really land uses and case studies. I do want to spend a minute on this. First of all, this is a discussion we have with almost all of our cities that we do work for, but it really struck me of how it applies to San Rafael as I was thinking through this. Housing is not a lost leader. The fiscal impact of residential or multifamily residential, there's a notion that it's automatically negative to a city's general fund. We have not found that to be the case. It depends. It depends on your share of tax increment. It depends on the tax valuation. It depends on the construction cost, the type of housing. And really, in reality, I think at a high level, the fiscal impact, as we've analyzed it for you, of the Northgate Mall residential, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is not negative. So it's really, it's a growth driver, if you will. And that speaks to the same narrative we were talking about before, how important that residential is for a variety of reasons. Retail is not just retail anymore. A mall of 1 million square feet just doesn't work the way it used to. The department store business is just not alive because of the online circumstance. So retail needs to be right-sized, and it needs to be blended at the end of the day. And that's what we're working on with so many communities across California. Teleworking is getting reconfigured because of the office market is being reconfigured because of teleworking. And then industrial. Industrial is critical to our economies for a variety of reasons. Your industrial district, as we said, has got super low vacancy, and because there's real demand for that type of fulfillment and industry and last mile delivery and the other components of industrial today that actually are helping to drive economies. And part of that is a function of what the consumer is doing. And that is that, we're all living in a curbside or delivery economy. And that's why fulfillment is so important. Next slide. So land use trends, retail, we've talked about. Office, we talked about. Industrial, residential is a driver, and hospitality. The hospitality business from a leisure perspective is back in full force, if you will, at post-pandemic. And so there are a lot of hospitality opportunities that we see, hotel opportunities that can really drive important revenue streams to different communities. Next slide. So teleworking growth, we have some statistics on that. Next slide. E-commerce growth, you can see the line and how incredibly dramatic e-commerce has gained steam over dramatically, that it's risen, if you will, as a percentage of overall retail. Next slide. Trends in retail, which are important. Again, malls, retail is really working when it's offering essentials like groceries or experiences, breweries and restaurants. These are the things that really define retail today. Next slide. And then we have a whole set of categories of design, programming, outdoor space. We sometimes say outdoor space is the new anchor tenant. Even the streetscape, if you will, in your downtown becomes so important to lever the outdoor environment for a whole variety of reasons. And then let's keep going. Bobby, there's other, and then there's examples of curated retail, which you can see that we've tried to pull across the state. Entertainment is driving retail as well, gaming. And then we have examples. This is a food hall in Southern California. That's a very curated form of food offerings, and food halls are really, they're high management intensivity, but they're really, there's really a time and a place for them in certain communities. And that could be an idea for your downtown for that matter. Next slide. Fostering entrepreneurship, talent density, culture, capital, and the regulatory environment are important to fostering entrepreneurship. Next slide. And we've got examples. We did the EDSP for Thousand Oaks, and there's a whole story behind it. I won't get into it, but it's become quite a success story for them. And then we worked on Corona, City of Corona's downtown revitalization plan. And ideally that wants to be implemented because we've got it approved and adopted by the city and had a tremendous amount of community input and workshops that hopefully can bring something to fruition in Corona. Next slide. And then as we talked about, biotech and life sciences is a growing industry. Next slide. And then La Jolla, there's a good case study where the city really helped by removing some of the obstacles when it comes to permitting, taking a little bit of a hands-off approach to allowing biotech and life sciences to grow there. The city created an ombudsman position to really help fast-track permitting and processing. And that type of staffing investment in economic development can realize a return. So that this is a good case study for that. Next slide. Small business support. Next slide. Workforce development. I want to try to get through this, but we have a lot of information in here. And then placemaking. So if we go to the next slide, Bobby, we have some pretty cool examples of where placemaking through designs and districts and events have taken place. So I would encourage you all to study this a little bit because we're trying to bring to you, again, case studies that have some applicability. Next slide. Temporary uses. This is one where parking structures were used not only on the roof but also as to project a movie screen onto. So there's some real creative solutions for some of these existing building circumstances, including parking structures as catalyst sites. Next slide. Walkability. I thought this was a pretty cool analysis on our part where the walkability or the distance, if you will, from the parking lot to get into the mall, we measured at about 700 feet that one might walk. Well, when you look at your downtown, and some people say, well, gosh, I don't know if I'm going to walk that much, or there's a park once strategy where you can park in a parking structure. And then the notion is that you're walking as opposed to parking all over the place, but it's a park once strategy. The same 700 feet, if you will, exists within your downtown district from different parking locations. So we made that comparison. Next slide. And the importance of pedestrian malls in downtown districts. Next slide. Same here. This is about best practices in creating those pedestrian malls, car dependency, concept testing, temporary closures, and then adding some permanence. And I know that Tom and I, we worked with City of Santa Barbara and State Street, And one of our recommendations in our report was, think about closing a portion, maybe not all, but a portion of State Street in Santa Barbara. It's 10 blocks. And it was just too much where the pedestrian wasn't there the way they could be and should be. And they went forward with a temporary closure. There was some success with it. And really, I think they're in a quasi-permanent circumstance today in a portion of State Street in Santa Barbara. Next slide. So this is just some visuals on the amenities of pedestrian, the importance of pedestrian and walkability in downtowns. Next slide. That was Boulder, Colorado. So I guess we're done. It's supposed to say thank you questions. So just a different way. It's a different way of ending, but I think that concludes our presentation. Again, I think the notion is we can fine tune this. We are looking for your feedback, but we want to get it, for the public consumption as well, for that matter, and ultimately take the first half and second half of the EDSP that we presented to you all at the committee level and present it to your full council in short order. So thank you very much.
Well, fantastic. Once again, I was reminded as to why we were so smart to have you and your company be the ones doing this work. I really am so interested about the different funding structures. And I think like everyone here, I'm like, okay, I need to go, I don't print anything out, but I'm like, I have to go print this out and read it. So really my question is for Director Hinkle, because I think we're all feeling that way. So much information. You did hit the highlights. But what's the best way to get feedback? If you're coming to the council in May, just figuring out timing. I want everyone in this room, people you send it to have a chance to weigh in. So what's the best way to provide feedback?
I'll post this today on the economic development department web page. We'll probably establish a link, for feedback or an email direct, but I'd like to make this available, for people to review. There are a lot of items there, programmatic and otherwise, so I understand that.
So but the people in this room
In
or
this
people
room,
virtually just
yes.
email.
That'd be fine.
The chamber may request a summarized version, perhaps from you to one of our committees, maybe even a committee, so that we can have a broader audience. A couple questions around that, though, prioritizing obviously the action items, but are we talking one-time funding versus ongoing funding? That also we need to understand that in order to prioritize those action items, because some of them are going to be ongoing.
Yeah, no, that's something I've actually been working with a Cosmont team on with a specific question line, implementation. What are the cost structures? What are the menu options? Is this ongoing or programmatic? And I do think they have, Bobby, do you have that comparison chart?
Yeah, that one sheet.
There was a one sheet that we had.
That's great.
Yep, let me pull it up here.
No, I think that's really, really helpful. I mean, great. We want everything on the menu, but we realize that that's just not, is not gonna make sense. And I think figuring out the priorities for year 1, year 2, year 3, etc.
So that was kind of the approach, because going through this is really always a question. What does this cost? What's the implementation schedule? Also could be overwhelming. You look at like year 1 activities, all of it. So the one that I, along with the Cosmo team, really identified is really critical for us to start, and stuff we've already been doing, is the 1.1, number 1.1, the BEAR program. Now, we may not call it the BEAR program. We may not call it the BEAR program, but that's the one that really kind of is a core economic development. It's a customer service enhancement program, and really starts to develop those relationships with community, the business community, the development community, and that just recognizing where we need to be, kind of reestablish a lot of these links that have been locked over time, different property owners, different business owners. And that's really what's critical. And that's been walking into Santa Fe. That's been one of the key items for myself to do. But that's really, kind of where we're at. But this chart was developed really to kind of evaluate that and the options and timing. So this is available there. This will be available also to kind of review. The biggest line item on this is really staffing. And that's the ongoing cost. Now, what I will say is it is called out there as a staffing piece, but how we deliver it today is a little different. We actually work with our community partners. In this case, we do have bilingual staffing capacity, but we have a contract with Marin SBDC. They have business consultants who speak Spanish, so we do get that need. That's how it's handled. But as we do more greater outreach to it, every time we go out, there's always more ads, right? Oh, I'd like to do this. We'd like to work on that. So that capacity gets absorbed pretty quickly. And really, this is just calling out there's recognition as we continue to get deeper into our community and identifying our community needs and implementing those needs. Capacity is really one's going to get eaten. There is program money here, and there are called out for this. Like technical assistance programs, and those are line item dollars, things we can do at that time. But as they grow, those may become up. So, it's just a recognition of this is the baseline program as we're starting with. And this is the 5-year period is a good period to start with, but years 1 through 3, I think, are going to be critical. Because then we can almost reevaluate of how do we do in the first 3 years, and what adjustments or changes do we need to occur, what level of investment do we need to really start making, and also what's been successful. Some things may not be successful, and just recognizing there's a pivot point. Okay, that didn't, we wanted to go this route, it didn't really pan out, we're going to switch to this direction.
So I'm glad, Director Hinkle said that because I'm on the same page. I wrote BEAR as the #1 overall arching, goals or programs, pointing to sort of 3 challenges of the list of challenges that we really could focus on. And one is the blight in vacant properties, especially in the downtown corridor. Our zoning development code, understanding what the obstacles are in our industrial areas. As well as, furthering this life science opportunities. And the other one I wrote is homelessness and crime. That sort of came up in the surveys over and over again with residents and the business community. So what are the programs that we can do relative to this BEAR that addresses those?
Can do or have done the launch of the state program.
But that would be part of my time. I also want to say I was really excited because I think Santa Fe is on the right page under your leadership, and we have 3 hotels coming online. We have a marketplace, going to be coming online in downtown. So we're on the right path. So it's super exciting.
Thank you. Well, in watching our time, we know Ken and Thomas and Bob, we could keep you forever asking questions way in the weeds. We are going to let you go. And I know the rest of us are going to be digging into this because I have other comments that are coming up, but really want to get our thoughts in order. So appreciate your time. You're welcome to keep doing virtually. We're going to go on to our economic partner updates, but really grateful for all the work and look forward to the presentation at the council. I know it'll be really well received.
Well, thank you all for being a great audience and all the great questions. And we appreciate this opportunity. We'll collaborate with Micah and make sure that we're on track, for the final presentation, the final report, final plan, the final presentation.
Fantastic. Maybe not have as many slides for the final presentation for the council.
Did you say you want us to come there live for the final?
Oh.
I do, yes.
I wouldn't have it any other way. No, I totally agree. Need to be there in person. This Zoom thing is it works for certain circumstances, but not for everything. So I'll be there.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah,
thank you all. Appreciate it.
That's good. That was a lot of information. And so I think if we just look at the timing, I know that I'm sure Councilmember Hill felt the same way I do. Like, I'm going to go read it because we are this subcommittee. So before it goes to the council, we'll have this be everyone's nighttime reading, please. So we are a little bit short on time. Thank you for seating some of it, but we have 16 minutes and we'll start with the chamber updates of the East NFL.
So I'm going to cede my minutes to Kalina with the East NFL work.
Kalina, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So as I mentioned, my name is Kalina Cloud. I'm project manager for CPI Developers. I'm filling in for Stephanie Plant, who's the chair of the East Santa Fe Working Group. We just had our regularly scheduled meeting on the 6th of April. We had guest Sergeant Rob Cleland from the Santa Fe Police Department come speak to the group. And it was actually kind of exciting. People outside of our group came because they were interested in the presentation. Sergeant Cleland discussed the launch of their new SAFE program, which the business community We'll be very excited. It'll be a great resource for them. We've actually already utilized the information from that presentation for an incident at one of the properties. The East Sangerville Working Group, Joanne and Stephanie specifically are collaborating with Lieutenant Huber on a flyer to distribute to the business community about the SAFE program, just kind of like a one-pager bullet points for that. We also had a really great discussion about the progress on finding a location for a tiny home village. And I think that got the East Sangerville business community really motivated. I think there's a lot of experience in development, and they're really ready and willing to help. And I think that conversation will continue into our next meeting and outside. That's it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And we always love the enthusiasm when people raise their hand and want to start moving some of these initiatives forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, or should we go on to the next item? Not seeing any questions or concerns. Downtown Business Improvement District. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, apologize, I was late. I got in a fight with my.
Oh, hopefully you won't. Oh,
No, make one, but it's fine.
okay.
But so the SAFE program, I'm super stoked about because I call them probably weekly at my other job. And they're fabulous. It's, they have a van, they have a group, they come, they take care of folks. It's just a really awesome thing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the NFL and the business community is too. And the PBID, Petaluma Downtown Association, and the Petaluma bid is doing the same thing. So I think it's really exciting to see all that come to fruition. I think it'll be really interesting to see why it didn't work in Sangerville those past years. So, I mean, maybe talk to, I don't know when all that is gonna start happening, but talk to the business or the property owners that voted against it, find out why, and then move on from there. Because I think getting that to our downtown is gonna be really important.
We didn't even get to a vote.
No vote.
No,
Okay.
no, there were like 6 property owners.
Oh, really?
Who owned 51% of the property.
Six property
Yeah,
owners?
it was a very
Wow.
different time. It was
So how
20
is
years
that,
ago.
how is that gonna work? Well, I thought, was it 5 years ago?
20.
20. Okay. All right, that's great. Okay.
Has that changed? Sorry. Has the ownership changed that drastically to now make up 51% being available?
So I don't know of all of the property owners, but properties have been bought and sold and resold. So I believe that there are more than 6 owners that own more than 51%, less than 50%.
So business updates, have you guys been in downtown and see the Loud Kitchen? Their grand opening is tonight. They had a soft opening a couple weeks ago. I highly recommend going in there. The business owners also own Bay Thai, so it's a lovely family and the food is amazing, so check them out. And then do you guys know about the business, the 2 vacancies next to Grapevine? That's owned by the same gentleman that owns Grapevine and Costco. He was gonna put in a brew and wing place. I don't know all the details, but he was having issues with city permitting. But then once he realized that he didn't want to deal with another restaurant because he's already doing 2, what he's going to put into those 2 locations, not just the one, because there was the one where he was going to do a mosaic art gallery, and then the brew and wing place in the other one. He's going to turn the both of them into this gorgeous high-end, invite-only mosaic art gallery. So it should be pretty interesting. It's going to be the only one in the United States. So I think we can really push to make this kind of a fun hot spot in Sangerville. The fact that it's in the arts district, I think will be really exciting. One other thing that we launched last month is our new social media campaign. We put out an RFP for a social media contractor because we do have a volunteer social media person on our board who just focuses on events and stuff. But what I wanted to do, and my biggest thing is looking to see what other downtown organizations are doing and just kind of copy to see what they're doing. And in Petaluma, we have someone, and all they do is focus on businesses, and they just showcase the businesses. They do posts and reels and social media. And so for the last month, we did the launch, and we're up by 272% engagements just in the last month since we've done this. So I highly recommend going. If you can actually go to our website, and click on social media, you can kind of see what she's doing. It's not about the events in downtown. She's still doing that as part of the BID board, but she's gonna do 3 posts a week, focus on events, or sorry, focus on businesses only. And then, yeah, on the Facebook, yeah. You can just kind of see, you know, what she's been doing. And so we have $1,000 in the budget for her for this year. Yeah. Which is like $10 a post, which is like insanely cheap. So we're really lucky to have Erica do that. Which is a really exciting move. And then if you go back to our website, one thing that I've been working on since the beginning of the year is an accurate downtown business database. There was one, so we had one, and it was driven by the business. So the businesses had to sign up. The businesses had to update their actually go to the home page. Yeah, and then click on complete directory. So, and it had a bunch of inaccurate information, inaccurate links. I don't really want the businesses to be in charge of updating it as they go, because they have so much, they're running businesses. So me as the executive director, I'm the one updating it, and adding it. We started with 75 businesses, we're at 120, so I'm slowly adding it. And another cool feature about this, and so I removed it, it had all the times and like, you know, shelter in place information, but on the back end of this is an actual working database. So I have the contacts, I have the emails, I have the name of the business owners, the day that they open. So all these really cool things on the back end that I can export as an Excel sheet, but I'm updating that as I go. So this is a really fun new kind of tool for the downtown. And then for go back to, so we have our Clean and Green Day is on Friday, the 21st. It's not on Earth Day, which is great because on Earth Day, I'm going to be managing the Better in 8 days and which brings 30,000 people to downtown. So I wouldn't be able to be at this one. But luckily, Corey with the city and Kara, who's the volunteer coordinator, they both wanted to move it to Friday as well, because they have a bunch of other things going on. And having this event in downtown Centerville is just really great because you get the workforce community. Last year we had BioMarin. This year we have a ton of other volunteers, about 40. So if you guys are interested in volunteering, that would be great. You just go to the website, click on volunteer, and then we'll get you guys locked and loaded. And I'm also looking for a lunch sponsor. So everyone that volunteers will be provided with a free lunch. And then May Madness, we have the posters and postcards were up last week. I also walked around the street closure information to all the businesses, which is really important so that they know that it's coming, they know how to participate, they know who to call if they have problems. So it's really great, all of that. I have extra posters and postcards. Terrence has them in his place right now. You didn't have to bring any. Okay, so I can bring those by later to you guys have any posters to distribute. And then we're up for the May Madness event. Our income is higher than where we were last year. So I'm hoping that this will be a really good increased fundraiser for the BID. We're up by 20 cars. Our sponsorship is up by almost 1,000. Our exhibitors are up by about 200, but we still have, you know, the things to go. So that. Let's go down a little bit. And then so Dining Under the Lights is now a monthly event. When I met with Andy with AIM to discuss the potential return of the farmers market, one of his stipulations was, I don't want to have the farmers market at the same time as Sunday Lights. That was why he decided to take time off. It's too hard to have 2 events at the same time. Downtown businesses having their stuff, their music, having a separate, it's just, you don't want 2 events at the same time. So I said, that's great. Let's bring the farmers market back. You guys can have Thursdays. We'll implement an idea of making it monthly so that the downtown businesses can still have their event that showcases their businesses. A lot of the businesses participated in Dining Under the Lights. It was the busiest day, the busiest days of the year for them were all Dining Under the Lights. So it's really great to keep it in downtown, and that way still have their big money maker days, still have their bands. So what we have is, if you click on Dining Under the Lights, I can show you the schedule, the draft schedule. Yeah. So these are the different days. And then when you click on the day, you can see what is gonna happen that day, and this is still pending, it's not confirmed yet, but we have the Arts District, Second Friday Art Walk, which we're featuring, Lincoln to Luton's, A to B block, B Street, so I just blasted it out, I think last week, so I'm still collecting all the information, and then once it's finalized 2 weeks prior, then we'll do our promo and marketing for this event. So I think having it, there's only gonna be 6. So last year it was from May to October and it was once a week, having 6, I think it will be really fun. We're gonna have kids activities, a writing bowl, possibly a car show, just really small. So hopefully this works. I'm really looking forward to it. The businesses are stoked. We're gonna get a lot of sponsorship for the kids activity zone. So I think that'll be really fun. And then go back, the West End Block Party, Micah and Victoria met with us in the beginning of the year to come up with like a really good plan for neighborhood outreach, and we started implementing that. The neighbors got wind, left me a nasty voicemail. I forwarded the transcripts to Micah. I called them back. I said, there's nothing on city council, gave them Micah's phone number. And then they showed up at city council, which was unfortunate. They were misinformed. There is a neighborhood outreach plan, which is coming to, which is being implemented. And then there was talk about flyer, which wasn't true. So it was just really unfortunate that there was the misinformation going around, because Micah has been awesome helping develop these protocols for event regulation and stuff. So working with Micah has been awesome. So I don't know what the West End Block Party is going to look like, but I'm not involved. I'm not involved. But yeah, but the neighbors sent a threatening email to me, and so that has not been
But a public service.
yeah. And so one kind of, I'm almost done. Click on events one more time. I talk to businesses all the time, and the number one thing I can't stand is the city doesn't do anything for us, and the BID doesn't do anything for us. And so my response to that is, what would you like to see, rather than just complain? And so if you scroll down, one suggestion was this downtown eats passport. So click on that. It's a way to, the restaurant time in downtown in July is really slow. So a downtown passport idea is basically similar to the elk hunt, right? So where basically a business signs up, I put you on a map, and then people have to go to those different locations to either get a discount or free glass of wine or whatever. And once and I did a lot of research to see what other downtown organizations were doing a passport program, but I don't want the businesses to have to stamp. I don't want them to have to collect anything. So it would all be coming through me, where I create this little card. They get their discount, they have a copy of their receipt, they submit it at Bogies 2 or wherever we decide. And then at the end of the month, we pull 1 or 2 names out, and then that person will get a $300 card. It's just kind of a fun thing to do, where we're bringing people to downtown, putting them in the businesses. We're not closing the street, because a lot of businesses don't like it when we close the street. So this was just something really fun and easy and affordable to do, where, when I do hear someone say, what would you like? And so this is kind of a result of that. And then my last update is Bo with the California Film Institute and I are discussing a potential movie night for this summer. And it's not finalized yet. We're still talking to Andy to see if he wants to do it on a Thursday during the farmer's market. Definitely not a Saturday, because the theater is packed. Not during the second Friday art walk or Diner Light. So we're still kind of noodling potential dates, but they're really looking forward to doing something to showcase downtown, make it art related, art focused, and having an after movie night. And finding sponsorship as well.
Can I add one for BID, which is there's an update on the funding that we get for the Arts District?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
No, it's gonna be my.
Sorry, I didn't say it.
I
I didn't say it.
Yeah, look, it was.
You can have that one.
Okay.
But does anyone have any questions?
No, I was just gonna say, use the farmers market to promote that sport. Because
So I want to thank everyone. I swear 90 minutes goes really, really fast in this mini meeting. So thank you all for spending 90 minutes. Please do download or look at the economic strategic plan. We really want your thoughts. I mean, he was super high level. So if you can add that to your list of things to do and give to Micah. As always, Sarah, your ability to like manage personalities and places and to revitalize downtown is really appreciated. I look forward to all those events. And the closing statement was, we are a cultural arts district. The first time we got the designation, we got a whopping, what was it? We're talking about $5,000 and we were super happy and the designation. And it's been confirmed, the state of California is giving us $600,000. All the incredible things we have downtown. And so Director Hinkle's all over that, figuring out how we can maximize those dollars and really work with our community partners.
Yeah.
So that is big momentum giver, and we are just beyond excited. So so thank you, Councilmember Hill, for setting that up, because we want to end on a high note. You're a minute over, but we appreciate your time. We are adjourning this meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Are there
Thank you.
restrictions on those dollars and how they can be spent?